The courtroom was silent except for the soft sound of muffled sobs. Tears streamed down 14-year-old Aaliyah Monroe's face as she sat trembling behind the plaintiff's table. Blind since birth, Aaliyah clutched her cane tightly, her knuckles white, struggling to breathe through her quiet weeping. Judge Harmon glanced at her with a mixture of concern and confusion. The room was packed, lawyers, reporters, jurors, all waiting to hear the conclusion of a case that had already shaken the community. Aaliyah's foster parents, the defense attorneys, sat on the opposite side, stiff and emotionless. No one knew why Aaliyah had suddenly broken down in court. She hadn't spoken a word since the proceedings began that morning. Until the doors at the back of the courtroom swung open. A hush fell over the crowd as a golden retriever slowly walked down the aisle. The dog, wearing a red service vest and wagging its tail gently, padded forward with quiet dignity. Aaliyah's head lifted slightly. Her sobs paused. She whispered in disbelief, "Charlie." The judge leaned forward. "Is this the girl's service animal?" The bailiff nodded, puzzled. "Yes, Your Honor. But, we were told he disappeared weeks ago." Charlie reached the front, sat at Aaliyah's feet, and nuzzled her hand gently. She reached down to touch him, and suddenly her demeanor changed. Her posture straightened. Her lips quivered. Then Aaliyah spoke for the first time in court, and her words sent a chill through the entire room. Aaliyah's voice was shaky, but clear. "Charlie, he saw everything," she said, gently running her fingers over his head. "And now I know I'm not crazy." Gasps echoed around the courtroom. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Miss Monroe, would you like to clarify what you mean?" She nodded slowly, then turned her head slightly toward the direction of the jury box, as if sensing their attention. "For weeks, they told me I was confused," she said. "That I made it up. That my memory was playing tricks on me. But Charlie, he always knew when I was scared. He barked when it happened. He barked because he was trying to protect me." There was a growing unease on the defense's side of the room. Aaliyah's foster mother shifted uncomfortably. Her foster father's jaw clenched. Aaliyah took a shaky breath. "I didn't want to believe they could do what they did. But Charlie knew. And that night, when he wouldn't stop barking, they made him disappear." "Objection," the defense attorney barked, standing up. "Your Honor, this is pure speculation," the judge raised a hand sharply. "Overruled. Let her speak." The room went dead silent. Charlie lay at Aaliyah's feet, tail still, eyes focused. As if he, too, remembered that night. Then Aaliyah whispered the words that made everyone in the room sit up, "They locked me in the basement. And when I screamed, Charlie barked. So they got rid of him." Her voice cracked. "And that's when I realized, they weren't protecting me. They were hiding something." Gasps rippled across the courtroom. The jury exchanged stunned glances. The judge leaned back in his chair, visibly rattled by the weight of what had just been said. Aaliyah continued, her voice stronger now, like each word gave her back a piece of the power she had lost. "That night, I heard footsteps. Heavy ones. I could smell the oil on his gloves, the cologne he always wore. I knew it was him. I screamed, and Charlie barked so loud. I thought someone would come. But no one ever did." Her foster father, Mr. Ellison, shifted in his seat, beads of sweat forming on his brow. Her foster mother, eyes wide, whispered something frantically to their lawyer. Charlie growled, low and soft, but unmistakable. Aaliyah bent down and wrapped her arms around him. "They took him away after that. I thought he was gone forever. But now he's back, and I know he's trying to help me." The judge turned to the bailiff. "Where has the dog been all this time?" The bailiff responded, "We found him outside this morning. Sitting at the courthouse doors. Alone." A murmur swept through the courtroom. Aaliyah nodded, her voice trembling again. "He came back because he remembered. He never forgot what they did. Then she slowly lifted her hand and pointed across the room, straight at Mr. Ellison. He was the one. And she helped cover it up. The courtroom froze. Even the reporters, pens in hand, had stopped writing. Judge Harmon's gavel struck once, sharp and commanding. Order in the court. But no one moved. All eyes were on Mr. and Mrs. Ellison, their carefully composed appearances crumbling by the second. Mr. Ellison's face turned pale. He looked at his wife, who now sat stiff as stone, avoiding his gaze. The silence between them said more than any words could. The prosecuting attorney rose from his seat. Your Honor, in light of this testimony, we request an immediate recess to verify these claims and examine the dog's reappearance. This could change the entire course of the case. The defense attorney jumped to his feet. This is absurd. The testimony of a child and a dog. There's no physical evidence, but before he could finish, the bailiff returned from the hallway, a file in his hand and urgency in his step. Your Honor, he said, voice tight, Animal Control just sent over a report. This dog, Charlie, he was found microchipped, registered to Aaliyah Monroe. But get this, he was anonymously surrendered to a shelter 3 weeks ago. The same week Aaliyah reported being hurt. The judge frowned. Do we know who surrendered him? The bailiff flipped the file open. Surveillance footage from the shelter confirms it was a man, matches the physical description of Mr. Ellison. A loud gasp shot through the gallery. Mrs. Ellison slowly turned her head toward her husband, her face a mix of shock and dawning horror. Mr. Ellison stood up abruptly. I want a lawyer. A different one. The judge stared him down. You already have one. He paused. Though after today, you may need more than that. Aaliyah sat quietly, one hand resting on Charlie's head, the other clutching the edge of the witness stand. She didn't smile, but a calm washed over her face, the kind that only comes when truth finally breaks through silence. Judge Harmon turned to the jury. This court is now in recess. Prosecution and defense will convene in chambers immediately. Bailiff, place Mr. Ellison in temporary custody for questioning. The courtroom erupted. Reporters dashed for the exit to file their stories. Spectators whispered in disbelief. Jurors looked stunned, like they just witnessed something they couldn't unsee. But amid the chaos, Aaliyah remained still. Charlie leaned into her, a soft whine escaping his throat. It wasn't sadness, it was relief. Like he, too, had waited for this moment. As the bailiff approached Mr. Ellison, the man didn't protest. He simply stared at Aaliyah with a look that hovered somewhere between anger and fear. His wife, now completely broken down, avoided his gaze. In the hallway outside the courtroom, a child protection officer stood waiting. She knelt beside Aaliyah and smiled gently. You were very brave today. And you're not going back with them. Not ever again. Aaliyah nodded, not saying a word. Charlie wagged his tail. The officer looked at the dog and smiled. He came back for you. Aaliyah finally spoke. He always did. That evening, as the courthouse emptied and the media frenzy roared outside, Aaliyah sat quietly in a small office with the child protection officer, a warm blanket draped over her shoulders. Charlie lay at her feet, eyes half closed, finally resting. Aaliyah stroked his fur gently. I thought I was alone, she whispered. The officer knelt beside her. You weren't. You just needed the world to see what you already knew. A knock came at the door. It was the prosecutor. His face was serious, but not unkind. Aaliyah, just so you know, we've opened a full investigation. What you said today, it opened a lot of eyes. You helped more than just yourself. Aaliyah nodded slowly. I just wanted to be safe. And now you will be, he said. We'll make sure of it. She didn't say anything more. She didn't need to. Because for the first time in a long time, she wasn't being ignored. She was being believed. As the officer led her outside under the soft glow of evening light, Aaliyah paused on the courthouse steps. She knelt beside Charlie, held his face in her hands, and whispered, "Thank you for coming back." Charlie licked her cheek. And together, a girl and her dog, survivors of silence, stepped into a new beginning. Weeks later, Aaliyah sat in her new bedroom, a soft, cozy space in a safe foster home, far from the cold walls of her past. Photos lined her desk, one of her and Charlie in the park, another from a community fundraiser held in her honor. People had reached out, strangers who were moved by her courage, offering support, letters, even college fund donations. She was still adjusting to the quiet, to the idea that no one would yell, threaten, or lie anymore. But every time she reached out and felt Charlie's soft fur beside her, she was reminded she wasn't walking this road alone. In school, Aaliyah had been invited to speak about courage and trust. Her story had inspired others to come forward, kids who had been silenced, doubted, or pushed aside. They found a voice in hers. One afternoon, the prosecutor visited. "I thought you should know," he said, smiling as he handed her a letter. Mr. Ellison confessed. "Turns out your memory was never wrong." He admitted to everything. Aaliyah traced her fingers over the letter. She didn't cry. She didn't flinch. Instead, she turned to Charlie, gave him a gentle scratch behind the ear, and whispered, "We did it." Outside the window, sunlight poured in. And for the first time, Aaliyah didn't just feel safe. She felt free. True healing had begun. And she owed it, in part, to the dog who never gave up on her. Months later, Aaliyah stood on a small stage at a community youth center, holding a microphone in trembling hands. She was taller now, not in height, but in presence. The room was filled with young people, teachers, counselors, and Charlie, sitting proudly in the front row with a new service vest and a golden tag that read, "Hero." She took a deep breath and spoke. "There was a time when I thought my voice didn't matter. When I thought being blind meant people wouldn't believe me. But I've learned that truth doesn't need sight. It needs courage." The crowd was silent, listening, not out of pity, but respect. "I had no proof. No recordings. Just a memory and a dog who never gave up on me. That was enough." She paused, a faint smile crossing her lips. "Sometimes, the ones who protect us don't wear badges or robes. Sometimes, they walk in on four paws and remind the world we're not invisible." Applause erupted. Charlie barked once, proud and loud, as if cheering her on. Later, as Aaliyah walked off stage and ran her hand gently over his head, she whispered, "We're just getting started." And she meant it. Because her story wasn't just about pain. It was about survival. About the power of truth, loyalty, and a bond that couldn't be silenced. A blind girl and her dog had not only exposed the unthinkable, they had changed everything. Aaliyah's story didn't end with applause. It began a ripple effect. News outlets picked it up, but not in the sensationalized way Aaliyah had feared. They focused on her bravery, on Charlie's return, and on how one girl's refusal to stay silent had forced a corrupt system to listen. A local nonprofit offered her a scholarship. A National Guide Dog Foundation named a new training center after Charlie. More importantly, children from across the country began writing her letters. Some were blind like her. Others were just scared, trapped in situations no one believed. Aaliyah's story gave them strength. With the help of her new guardians, she started a small podcast called Still, I Speak. She used it to share not just her story, but the stories of others like her. Survivors. Fighters. Truth-tellers. She and Charlie became symbols of something bigger. Not just justice, but hope. One evening, while recording an episode, Aaliyah paused. Charlie rested nearby, peacefully asleep. She smiled into the mic and said, "If you're out there and you feel unheard, know this. Your voice matters. Your truth matters." And you are never as alone as they want you to believe. A quiet moment passed. Then she leaned back, took off her headphones, and scratched Charlie behind the ear. Good work today, partner. Charlie gave a sleepy wag of the tail. And just like that, they kept going, two survivors lighting the way for others still trapped in the dark. Now the world was listening. And Aaliyah Monroe was far from done. A year had passed. Aaliyah stood at the gates of a prestigious academy for young leaders, the youngest speaker ever invited to their annual summit. She wore a dark blazer, sunglasses, and a small gold pin shaped like a paw on her lapel. Charlie stood beside her, older now, a bit slower, but still proud. He had his own badge too, honorary member of the Academy's safety team. The auditorium buzzed as students and mentors waited to hear her speak. When Aaliyah stepped on stage, the room hushed like before. But this time, there was no trembling in her voice. I used to think the world only listened to loud voices, she said. To people with titles, power, or perfect sight. She took a breath. But then I realized, even the softest voice can move mountains when it tells the truth. Even a blind girl, with a dog and no proof, can shatter silence. The room erupted in applause. As she exited the stage, a young girl, no older than Aaliyah had been the day it all began, ran up and hugged her. Thank you, she whispered. Because of you, I told someone. And they believed me. Aaliyah knelt beside her, smiled, and said the words that had become her quiet mantra. You were never alone. That night, back at home, Aaliyah sat in her room, the walls now decorated with awards, letters, and framed photos of her and Charlie in moments of triumph. She placed a hand on his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart. We did good, she whispered. You brought me back. And because of you, I'll never stop fighting. Charlie stirred, leaned into her hand, and closed his eyes peacefully. Outside the window, the stars glowed, silent witnesses to the story of a girl who refused to be forgotten, and a dog who never stopped believing in her. The story of Aaliyah Monroe and Charlie had ended. But their legacy had only just begun. Watch the video on the screen.